Hello, or should I say dobar dan, and welcome to a very special forum with Croatia's national TV station HRT and EuroparlTV. On July the 1st, Croatia ties the knot with the European Union, becoming the 28th member of our ever-growing family. A big party in Zagreb, perhaps?
Definitely. It's been a long 10-year journey for the southeastern European country. It had to deliver Croats accused of war crimes to The Hague, something that hasn't gone down too well with the majority of its people. And Slovenia's blockade of its membership over border disputes are just a few of the issues it's had to address in order to pass the all-important Copenhagen criteria for membership.
But public support for entry into the EU has been on a steady decline. In January, a referendum showed that 66% of Croats supported membership, but that number has now halved.
The EU is the biggest trading bloc in the world, but it's still knee-deep in an economic crisis. And boy, what do we have of problems? Crisis in Greece, Cyprus, record highs for unemployment and especially youth unemployment. And unlike in the United States, our economy is still contracting.
Over in Croatia, the picture's not much better. Unemployment's at 22% and they haven't posted growth since 2008. But its government is confident of turning things around with an injection of 10 billion euros of EU funds.
Well, to discuss Croatia's imminent membership, joining us in the studio are Slovenian Social Democrat MEP Tanja Fajon. Welcome, dobrodošli.
Hvala.
Representing our newest member state is the European People Party's Croatian observer and soon-to-be MEP Andrej Plenković. Dobar dan, dobrodošli.
Dobar dan, lijepi pozdrav.
And our final guest is Luxembourg Liberal Democrat MEP Charles Goerens. A welcome and pleasure to have all of you on the show. Now, Mr. Plenković, coming to you first. Now, I'm sure that you're very excited to start your new job, but at the time of the parliamentary elections, only 20% of people actually voted. What does that say about the sentiment in Croatia?
Well, I think it says more about the very wrong assessment of the governing coalition to decouple the European and local elections rather than the sentiment of the Croatian people vis-à-vis the EU membership. Because the elections for local counties and cities were held on the 19th of May. If they were coupled, we would have had 50% turnout as we had at the local elections. It was a very abrupt campaign where the majority thought they would be better off with a swift campaign, but they lost the election. So
in your opinion, just a bad media policy?
Well, not a bad media policy. It was the wrong assessment of the ruling coalition to hold elections not together with the local elections, and therefore I think that the Croats, they missed the rendezvous between the Croatian people and the European project. I think these are two types of mistakes which should not happen in the future. Luckily, we have the second round already next year when the European general elections will be held, and it is also up to us new MEPs to demonstrate to the Croatian people the relevance of the European Parliament, the importance of the participation in the democratic process, and I'm sure that the next year we will have many more Croats actually coming out to the polling stations and voting because it is important to participate in this process.
Ms. Fajon, Mr. Goerens, where are you going to be on the 1st of July? Are you going to be Strasbourg on the date, and do you expect big parties to see there?
I certainly expect to celebrate with dear friends from Croatia, either already in Zagreb as well in Ljubljana, I suppose so, and of course on the 1st of July in Strasbourg. I would like to mention something what my colleague from Croatia said. I think that the problem for low turnout is much deeper. It's not only maybe one aspect is the government approach, but of course it's as well media, it's the whole situation in Europe today. I mean, in Slovenia in 2009 we had a turnout of 30% and even less. I'm more afraid that next year when we will all have the elections, we will have to work really hard to convince our European citizens why Europe is really important to us and to get and regain their confidence. And this actually was happening as well in Croatia. It's nothing which is different from the other states, and it's nothing which is really just one aspect of the mistakes.
And Mr. Goerens, would you like to jump in?
Yes, I think that the 1st of July, it will be a very important moment for Croatia and for Europe as well, but people inside Croatia and inside the European Union expect answers to the important questions, how to overcome the huge jobless rate, how to overcome the crisis and so on. In this way, I hope that the 1st of July will be a day of hope for everyone, given the fact that, in my view, it's my conviction, that the best way to overcome all these problems is the European integration process, a good integration process.
Okay, well, let's see what Croatians think in this report by EuroparlTV, who was in Croatia at the time of the European parliamentary elections. Let's take a look at what Croatians really think.
I think that these days, these months, these years in Europe, ordinary people, citizens, they are eager to say no to politicians and the institution represented by politicians. Unfortunately, it also goes to the European Parliament.
Mi smo malo skeptični prema Europskoj uniji, ne iz nekih ideoloških razloga, nego iz jednostavnog razloga što Europska unija sve više i više prelazi u jednu silnu mehanizaciju, jednu instrumentariju. More things will be privatized in August. You won't be getting a chunk of money. In other words, if you want to join the rich man's club, you will have to probably pitch in with 500 million euros, whatever. So basically, I'm trying to dispel the illusions that many Croats still harbor about some tentative of possible good life in the European Union. It's a joke, and it's a dangerous joke.
Samim izlaskom iz CEFTA prema najavama koje dolaze iz tvrtki, govori se o tome da bi na kraju bez posla moglo ostati nekoliko tisuća radnika zbog seljenja postrojenja, zbog seljenja poslova s druge strane granice.
Neosluškivanja interesa građana, da ona može dodatno generirati konflikt. A mislim da konflikt u ovoj situaciji nikome nije potreban, tim više što je Hrvatska pred ulaskom u Europsku uniju, što je situacija u društvu u socioekonomskom smislu katastrofalna.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we saw lots of negative comments there.
Mr. Plenković, do you agree with this?
Well, it was you who chose the interlocutors in your report. Of course, I don't agree because a general line which is very important is the following. Croats, both citizens and the mainstream parties and the institutions wanted to join the European Union for the last 20 years. It was a very long journey, very complex reform process, a lot of criteria fulfilled on political side, on economic side, on sectorial side. It is not a surprise that we are joining now on the 1st of July 2013. Rather, the general feeling among most of the Croats, we are very sorry we are joining this late. We would have been far happier if we had joined together with Slovenia and other countries of Central and Eastern Europe in 2004, and that was not due to us. That was due to the aggression on Croatia during the 90s.
But just staying back on Croatian people.
And well, these were mainly Croatian politicians which you had and candidates actually for elections that you had in your report. The Croatian people were very clear in the referendum. We had 66% in favor in the January 2012. All the opinion polls over the last 10, 15 years were in favor. Of course, people were far more in favor, let's say, when we were further to the integration, because the general atmosphere in the Union was far better off, both economically and politically and socially. We are now joining alone, the only country after 30 years that has passed since Greece joined. And we are coming after 6 years of consecutive crisis, institutional, financial, economic, Eurozone, Schengen, confidence crisis in the European Union. In time of internet, globalization and instant communication, Croats are following what's going on. It's natural to be a bit careful and skeptical,
sure,
but the general line is
there a
positive.
sense that maybe Croats want to join the rich man's club like we saw in that video? Ms. Fajon.
Yeah, I would like to repeat what I said before. I think the problem is that politics nowadays is really very far away from the citizens. We have to grab this opportunity. We all share our responsibility as politicians, dealing as well with European affairs. It's very important Croatia joins European Union because we show that the whole integration process is alive. It's a symbol as well and a positive sign to the whole rest of the region. But we have to listen to the citizens because their concerns today are very important to us. It's happening all over the Europe. It's fear, it's an economy unstable, a lot of people without jobs, and they just fear about their future. So I do understand the comments of citizens on the streets. It's something we have to be able to communicate about the positive stories we have today in Europe. And what is happening to us, we are all caught in a very isolated states where we have to fight again and again towards the domestic public, towards all the domestic issues which today prevail. And we have to explain citizens once again and to remind us what Europe brings. Croatia will be a good example.
Mr. Gorins, you've been following the enlargement process from its very beginning. Do you think Croat people understand what benefit EU will bring to them and in what position they are going to be in the next few months?
I can understand that people in Croatia are not very lucky because there's a huge decrease in the economy over a period of the last 5 years. I can understand that people are rather occupied by their own problems, by their personal problems, than by the huge political visions. But let's say at the very beginning, and let me say above all, that we are in a transitional phase. This is the end of a process which aimed at overcoming all the difficulties met by people in this region. War, we had negotiation, peace talks and so on. I think that the peace has been consolidated. That's the end of the first phase. Now we are entering the European integration process. I must confess that it has never been so difficult to explain the advantages of the European integration process than nowadays. We have to explain and to talk to Croatian people that in our view it's better to see the Croatian evolution within the European Union, because the European Union has the means to define a strategy in a multipolar and global world. Europe is not the only cause of all the difficulties. Europe is not the part of the problem. Europe is the part of the solution. In my view, and you can say it by considering the results and the track records of all European countries, Germany does well. What is not the case for Greece or Italy or Spain, but all these countries belong to the same European Union. There must be a possibility to better exploit the situation and the possibilities provided by the European Union as such, and that must be understood by Croatian people as well as by all the other European citizens.
You have mentioned advantages of the membership, but how will Croatia be financed, especially in the first months of the accession, after the accession, because Great Britain and Netherlands are opposing the project of putting the fresh money into this year EU budget, and how is that question going to be resolved?
Well, that's peanuts. If one member state opposes this decision, I am sure we'll overcome this. But in the longer run, Croatia will be provided with European money for the amount of close to 4% of GDP, which is a lot, under the condition that Croatia is able to absorb this amount, and that's the reason why they have to tackle these problems and by overcoming all the structural problems linked to governance and so on in their own country. And the political authorities of Croatia have been negotiating over the past all these aspects. I think the choice has been done by the political authorities based on the public opinion. If you have a lack in acceptance over a short period, it must not be definitely the case.
And being aware as well that Croatia has received a lot of money through EU funds already during the whole accession process, so it is for surely benefiting. I personally can say Slovenes, for example, which were joining EU in 2004, we had an enormous advantage. If you just look how many projects, how many EU money, infrastructure, roads, investments in companies, in the development of the country, the same is happening in Croatia.
But does your country support Croatia's membership?
Absolutely.
I mean, initially you did try to blockade
Absolutely.
at one point.
Certainly we had, it was not really, it was the question of unresolved border dispute. We learned our lesson at that time, and I hope that the same story will not repeat once Croatia is in European Union. We found a solution. It has been a difficult time because it was at certain point very difficult for the citizens on both sides of the borders, and we were just afraid that some incidents might occur. But luckily we found a solution. I think it's a good one that we have an arbitration body which will deal in parallel with the process. And the same issues, we have a lot of bilateral open issues. We were resolving them step by step. I would say always bilaterally you have ups and downs, but somehow nowadays I would say Slovenes, especially when you ask economists and people in business, they would say it's a great advantage. It's a challenge, but it's advantage when Croatia
But is there
joins.
not maybe a problem, an issue that having Croatia is in the EU is maybe another lame duck member state, one that needs to be propped up by EU
if I
funds?
look from the Slovenian
All of the
perspective, Croatia will become in a common area. We will have a free trade, freedom of movement as well. It's not that the Schengen border would open, but the customs will be abolished on the 1st of July on the border between Croatia and Slovenia. The cooperation, political, economical, everything will be much easier for business development, and especially what is important for people-to-people's contact as well. For example, now holidays are starting. Roaming will be cheaper for all our citizens traveling to Croatia, and Croatia is a fantastic destination for holidays. Life will be simply easier.
What is your stand on this issue?
May I just refer to 3 points which I think are very important in this debate.
First, financing.
First on the budget issue. I think that every country when joins the European Union should be treated equally. That means when a newcomer is in, then the revision of the multi-annual financial framework is necessary. The fresh money is important, and accordingly the revision of the budget of this year. I think that what some member states have done in this exercise over the last couple of months, and I've been following this closely since I was an associate member of the Budgets Committee, was simply inappropriate. The fact that the plenary hasn't voted the financial entry of Croatia before joining, I think it is something that should have been certainly avoided.
Is it that only technical question or not?
No, it's not. It's an entirely political question, because nobody is questioning the amount of money, which was, by the way, agreed in the accession treaty a year and a half ago. We are now discussing where does the money come from. And the money should come not from the redeployment from the ceilings in certain budget headings, which the money that has not been utilized, but it should be a fresh money, especially since we are not discussing an enormous amount of money. We are discussing just over 125 million euros. This is an issue that should have been tackled differently. And the countries which have had a differing view, I think were not doing a good thing neither for the European Union nor to Croatia. My second point on the bilateral issues, because you mentioned it, the lessons we have learned is that the bilateral issues which are not related to the acquis should not be part of somebody else's integration process. And this was very clear. We feel that the European Union is not a substitute to international law. It's not a substitute to bilateral relations between the countries. And therefore, this type of behaviors should be avoided in the future. The third point, which you mentioned now, whether Croatia is a lame duck or are we going to have a scenario just as we had in countries such as Cyprus lately or Greece a little bit earlier. On the contrary, we have been working hard, as I said. The Commission has closely monitored in the pre-accession phase our political stability, our legal system, our financial system. We attacked fiercely corruption as a phenomenon which has become entirely socially unacceptable in Croatia. The certain legal processes are ongoing. We'll leave the courts to decide on the culpability.
But Mr. Goring, to bring you in as well, you know, in Europe, there are some concerns that corruption is still prevalent in Croatia. So what would you say to that? Have they solved their problem, or are they solving it enough?
Well, I think one must be aware of the fact that not everything is without any problems in Croatia. But as far as the Croatian government is committed to be aligned with the European acquis, with the acquis communautaire, I have still hope to overcome these kind of problems. Let's say, above all, that it's very important that Croatia is in a position to make reforms with the help of the European Union, because there is no alternative to this process. And in addition to that, one must say that Croatia is part of the European Union, but not part of the whole European Union. Croatia is still outside the monetary union, economic and monetary union of the European Union.
Outside the Schengen as well.
That provides Croatia a little bit more time to adapt its situation. Based on a weak currency, it is not in a position like Greece or Portugal, for them is the huge an obstacle to overcome their situation. But it's not still the case, not yet the case for Croatia.
How to overcome the situation?
If I just come to corruption, because I'm dealing basically with corruption cases every day through our special committee in the parliament. Corruption is a problem. It's a problem of Croatia, it's a problem of Slovenia, it's a problem of whole European Union. We are facing the loss of 1% of GDP yearly, which is an annual EU budget on the cases of corruption in Europe. It's around 120 billion euros. Imagine our governments are not efficient in tackling the corruption. Croatia did some very positive steps, but we are, if you look the region as such as well, the Western Balkan, all my countries, Slovenia, we are facing very difficult problems. And recently we saw what happened in Czechia, and this year we will have first-time reports from the European Commission about the corruption in all our countries, and I hear that the reports will be rather very negative.
Croatia has been dealing with corruption issue very hardly in the past 10 years. Do you see Croatia as a role model for the other Western Balkan countries, and who is going to follow Croatia?
To some extent, I would agree that Croatia could be a role model, at least what we experienced in our common region, that first time we saw some really highly ranking politicians which were accused or sentenced or in the court procedures. In other countries that was not really the case. So to that extent, yes, but still a lot has to be done.
But coming to the issue of Croatia, the new member state, I mean, we had countries like Bulgaria and Romania. Some countries in the European Union haven't been big fans of these countries. So, you know, they haven't been given the rights to Schengen. So do we think that maybe the EU does compromise when it comes to enlargement?
Well, the whole enlargement methodology has altered over the last couple of years. It is exactly due to the experience of the big enlargement 2004, especially the certain leftovers from Bulgaria, Romania enlargement that made our negotiations far more demanding and far more difficult. Therefore, Croatia was not...
And was that a good thing, do you think?
Well, we will see, because we are now saying we had far tougher conditions because everything was beforehand. It was like deeds rather than promises that were the logic that was adopted in our negotiations. And therefore, Croatia had to both fulfill the criteria for opening of the benchmarks of some chapters and closing, and putting institutions and implementation and the pre-accession monitoring rather than the cooperation and verification mechanism which was in place and is still in place, especially in terms of Schengen, organized crime, corruption, etc. for Bulgaria and Romania. Croatia is, of course, committed both to join the Eurozone and to join the Schengen, because these are rather exceptions than something that we could have, if we had fulfilled criteria immediately before entry, would have joined both immediately, but that's not the way the things
obviously,
are.
You do want to join, but do you think that these restrictions...
This is a legal commitment. We will fulfill the Schengen criteria in the next 2 or 3 years. There is a special Schengen evaluation process where the member states want to be really sure that Croatia is capable of being a solid external frontier of the European Union.
It's true that each next enlargement is more difficult. The history showed us bad lessons, and with Croatia the process was more demanding. I just sincerely hope that after Croatia there will be next enlargements, because we need strong Europe, and strong Europe means to have as well our neighborhood, which is part of Europe. I mean as well all the other countries of Western Balkans. So we have to continue, we have to show that the process is alive. This is very important, and even if we are compromising, we have to understand that we are compromising for our better future. We are living in a globalized world, which means that we are challenged with common issues such as environment, terrorism, economy, and only together we will be strong. So Croatia is the next step, but afterwards we have to move on.
Mr. Gorins, do you agree that EU doors should be open?
Yes, but we have to make a deeper reflection, because we have not only to consider the absorption capacity of new member states, but also the absorption capacity of the European Union. And given the fact that the European Union is not functioning very well in several fields, we have to, first of all, to make the European engine better working, and later on accept new members. The door must keep open. There's not a shadow of doubt about this.
And Mr. Gorins, just quickly, do you think it's a real accomplishment for Croatia to be joining the EU?
Yes, of course, because there's no alternative to it. For Croatia, it's a huge opportunity to overcome its difficulties met over the past, and the European Union is the best way to integrate in the world economy.
We've run out of time, but thanks to our guests, Andrej Plenković, Charles Goerens and Tanja Fajon.
You've been watching The Forum. Take care and goodbye, or as they say in Croatia, do viđenja.
Do viđenja.